It was just after 9 p.m. when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, hesitant, like someone unsure if they should even be there. I opened the door, and there she was. Emily. My neighbor. Wrapped in an oversized gray hoodie, hair tied up in a loose bun, eyes puffy like she'd been crying for hours. I hadn't seen her since her husband packed up and left 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry to bother you this late, she said, voice barely above a whisper. But something's wrong with my sink. It's flooding the kitchen, and I don't know what to do. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my toolbox and followed her across the driveway. Inside, her kitchen was a mess. Water pooled on the floor, dishes scattered. But more than that, the whole house felt hollow. Like the warmth had been sucked out of it. As I got down to work, she stood nearby, arms crossed, trying to hold herself together. You always were good with your hands, she said softly, almost smiling. Ryan never even tried to fix things. He always called someone else. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, tightened a valve, and wiped the floor with a towel. When I stood up, she looked at me differently. Like I was someone she hadn't noticed until now. You saved me from a flood, she said, half laughing, half crying. Guess that makes you my hero tonight. Then, silence. Just the hum of the refrigerator. Until she whispered it. Stay the night. My heart stopped. But before I could even answer, she added, just, stay. I don't want to feel alone tonight. You don't even have to say anything. Just be here. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't about romance. It was about something deeper. A connection. A comfort two people find when they've both been hurt, and somehow, start to heal together. I didn't sleep much that night. Emily had given me a blanket and I took the couch, even though she offered the guest room. I told her the couch was fine. Truth was, I just didn't want to be too far in case she needed anything. Around midnight, I heard her footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Barefoot. Hesitant. She paused near the living room, whispered, "You okay?" "I'm good," I said. Then silence again. But not awkward, more like a peaceful understanding. By morning, sunlight crept in through the blinds, spilling across the hardwood floor. I sat up and noticed a mug sitting on the table beside me. Coffee. Hot. And next to it, a note. Didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful. I'll be in the garden. M. I walked outside and saw her kneeling by a patch of flowers, hair down, glistening in the morning light. She looked up, smiled, genuinely this time. You remembered I like my coffee black, I said, raising the mug. She shrugged playfully. Some things are easy to remember. We sat together on the back steps, watching the wind play with the grass. For a while, neither of us spoke. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt right. Then she turned to me. You know, after Ryan left, I thought I'd feel free. But instead, it's like I've been carrying 100 invisible weights. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She continued, last night was the first time I didn't cry myself to sleep. Not because everything's okay, but because you were here. I looked at her, unsure how to respond. But I didn't need to. She reached over and gently touched my hand. I don't know what this is, she said. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know. I'm glad you came. I nodded. And in that simple moment, I realized, some of the strongest connections are born not from passion, but from presence. Just being there. Just staying. Later that afternoon, a soft summer rain started to fall. Emily invited me to stay for lunch, something simple, just grilled cheese and tomato soup. We sat at her kitchen table like old friends. The tension from the night before had faded into something quieter. Calmer. More familiar. After we ate, she walked into the living room and returned with a cardboard box. It was worn and taped on the sides, like it had been moved from one place to another too many times. "I was cleaning out the closet before the sink started acting up," she said, placing it between us. "Didn't get far." I watched as she opened the box. Inside were photos, stacks of them. Some framed, some just loose. Her wedding. Her parents. Vacations. A life that looked happy on the surface. "This one," she said, holding up a picture of her and Ryan in front of a cabin, "was taken 2 months before he asked for the divorce. Can you believe that?" Her voice didn't crack. She didn't cry. But I could feel the weight in her words. "I believed in that version of us," she continued. "But he didn't." Then she pulled out another photo, one I didn't expect. It was of her, maybe 5 years ago, at a community barbecue. I was in the background, blurry but recognizable, laughing with someone else. She smiled as she looked at it. "You've always been there, haven't you?" "I guess I have," I said, surprised she'd even noticed. She reached for another photo, this one of her and her dog, Bailey, who passed away last winter. "Everything changes," she whispered. "Except the memories. They hang on, even when you wish they wouldn't." She set the photos aside and looked at me. For a long time. "I'm tired of trying to be strong," she said. "You don't have to be," I told her. That was the first time I saw her truly exhale. Not just physically, but emotionally. Like she'd been holding her breath for months. She leaned her head gently against my shoulder. Not out of romance. Not out of impulse. Out of trust. By evening, the light drizzle had turned into a full-blown summer storm. Thunder rolled in the distance, and flashes of lightning lit up the sky. Emily lit a candle in the living room just in case the power went out. It flickered softly, casting a warm glow between us. We sat on the couch, sipping tea, listening to the rain pound against the windows. She tucked her knees up under a blanket and looked at me with a quiet curiosity. "Do you ever feel like life pushes people apart, just to bring the right ones closer?" she asked. I wasn't sure how to answer that. But the way she said it made me wonder, was she talking about her and Ryan, or her and me? "I think, sometimes we don't notice what's right in front of us until everything else fades away," I said. She smiled, not the sad smile from earlier, but something softer. Real. The lights flickered once. Then again. Then out. Darkness. She let out a small laugh. "Well. That's perfect timing." I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, but she stopped me. "No, wait. I like the candlelight. It's peaceful." So we sat there, in the dark, with only the candle between us. And in that quiet, I felt something shift. Not romantic tension, not yet. Just an undeniable closeness. The kind that sneaks up on you and suddenly feels like home. Outside, the storm howled. Trees swayed. Wind rattled the windows. But inside, in that little living room, it was calm. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. "You've always been kind to me. Even when I was too distracted to see it." I looked at her. "I wasn't waiting for anything," I said. "I just cared." She nodded slowly, and leaned her head back against the couch, eyes closed. For a moment, we said nothing. The storm carried on outside. But the silence between us? It said everything. The storm lasted well into the night. The wind eventually calmed, but the power stayed out. Emily and I stayed on the couch, talking in low voices, about everything and nothing. Childhood memories. Regrets. Silly things, like which pizza toppings we hated. It was the most natural conversation I'd had in months. But then, the mood shifted. She turned to me, her face half lit by candlelight. Her eyes didn't look tired anymore. They looked thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." She hesitated. Took a breath. "Why didn't you ever say anything before?" she asked. "About what?" I replied, though part of me already knew. "About how you felt. About me. I mean, back then." I blinked. My heart skipped. I wanted to say it wasn't the right time. That she was married. That I didn't want to be the guy waiting in the wings, hoping for something bad to happen. Instead, I said, "Because you were happy. Or at least, I thought you were." She looked down at her hands. I was good at pretending. Silence. Then, slowly, she turned to face me again. "Would you have said something, if I had?" I didn't answer right away. But when I did, it was simple. Yes. That one word hung between us like thunder that never clapped. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just reached out, took my hand gently, and held it like it was something fragile. "I don't know what happens next," she said quietly. "But I do know this, being around you feels like breathing again. We didn't make promises. We didn't talk about love. But for the first time since Ryan left, she didn't feel lost. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone." The next morning brought blue skies, dry air, and power finally restored. Emily made pancakes, badly. The batter was lumpy, and she burned the first one, but we laughed through it. It felt like a new start. Until the doorbell rang. She froze, spatula mid-air. "Who would come this early?" she asked, wiping her hands and walking to the front door. I followed behind her, and when she opened it, her smile disappeared. It was Ryan. Standing there in a crisp shirt, fake smile plastered across his face like nothing ever happened. "Emily," he said smoothly, "I was just driving by. Thought I'd check in. See how you're doing." She blinked. "Driving by? You live 2 towns over." He chuckled awkwardly. "Well. I missed this place. And you?" Emily didn't say a word. Then Ryan's eyes shifted, and locked onto me standing behind her. "Oh. Company," he said, his tone suddenly sharper. I stayed quiet, not out of fear, but because this wasn't my fight to jump into. Emily stood a little taller. "I'm doing fine," she said flatly. "Really fine, actually." He glanced between us again, and something flickered behind his eyes. Ego? Jealousy? Regret? "You moved on fast," he said under his breath. Emily took a slow breath. "You walked out. Remember? I didn't ask you to." Ryan laughed bitterly. "So this guy," he motioned to me, "what is he? The replacement?" This time I stepped forward, calm but firm. "I'm not a replacement," I said. "I'm just someone who showed up, when you didn't." The silence after that was heavy. Ryan looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he nodded stiffly. "Well. Good luck with that." And then he walked away. Emily closed the door, her hands trembling just slightly. "I didn't expect that," she whispered. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. Then looked up at me, and smiled, just a little. "Yeah. Because he didn't rattle me this time." After Ryan left, there was a strange stillness in the house. Emily didn't cry. She didn't vent. She just went back to flipping pancakes, like she refused to let the past ruin her morning. But later, while cleaning up the dishes, she paused in front of the hallway closet. She opened it slowly, reached up to the top shelf, and pulled down a small, wrapped box covered in dust. "What's that?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she sighed. "He gave this to me on our 3rd anniversary," she said. "But we had a fight that night. I was so angry, I never opened it. She looked down at the box in her hands like it was something foreign. I told myself I'd open it when we made up. But, we never really did. She sat on the couch, the box resting in her lap. Want me to give you some space? I asked gently. No, she said. Stay. She carefully peeled back the wrapping. Inside was a black velvet jewelry box. She opened it. It wasn't jewelry. It was a small key. Beneath the key was a handwritten note in Ryan's handwriting, for your dream studio. Someday. Her breath caught. We talked about converting the garage, making it into a little art space for me. I watched as she stared at the key, not with longing, but with something else. I waited for him to care, she whispered. He gave me this, but he never even asked if I used it. Never helped. Just a gesture. She stood up and looked out the window toward the garage. Then turned to me. Do you think it's too late, she asked. For the studio? I asked. No. For me. For starting over. For doing something that's just mine. I stepped closer. It's never too late. She smiled softly. You really believe that? I do. She looked down at the key again, then placed it gently on the table. Then maybe it's time I stop waiting for life to happen, and finally start living it. By afternoon, the sky was clear and the air smelled like fresh rain. Emily stood in front of the garage, the small silver key in her hand, turning it slowly between her fingers. I haven't been in here since before the divorce, she said, glancing at me. It always felt like a forgotten space. Like my dreams were buried under boxes. Maybe it's time to dig them out, I replied. She slipped the key into the lock. It stuck at first, like it didn't want to turn. But with a click, the door creaked open. Dust swirled in the sunlight. Inside were old chairs, a broken lamp, some of Ryan's leftover tools, and a stack of boxes labeled, "Someday," in her handwriting. She laughed softly. Someday, she echoed. I guess that day is today. We spent hours in there, clearing things out, making space. Emily tied her hair back and rolled up her sleeves, a determined spark in her eyes I hadn't seen before. I used to paint here, she said, pointing to a spot in the corner. Just little things. But then life got busy. Ryan didn't think it was important. I handed her a paintbrush I found in one of the boxes. What do you think? She held it like it was something sacred. I think. I want this space back. I want me back. We laughed, cleaned, and imagined where everything would go, an easel by the window, a shelf for supplies, soft lights overhead. As the sun dipped lower, she looked around and whispered, I forgot how good this feels. Doing something for myself. Reclaiming something that was always mine. I leaned against the wall, watching her sweep the last of the dust out the door. You know, I said, you don't have to do this alone. She turned, looked at me with a soft smile. I know, she said. And I'm glad it's you who stayed. For the first time, it felt like this wasn't just a chapter in her recovery. It was the beginning of a whole new story, one she finally got to write on her own terms. The next morning, I stopped by Emily's place with 2 coffees and a surprise, a fresh set of paintbrushes and a blank canvas I picked up from a local art store. When she opened the door and saw what I was holding, she lit up. Are you serious? She laughed, eyes wide. You didn't. I handed her the bag. I figured if you're going to start again, you might as well start fresh. She held the canvas in both hands, looking at it like it was something more than just fabric and wood. It's been so long, she said. I don't even know what to paint. Then just start, I replied. Anything. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. We brought everything into the garage, now mostly cleared out, with sunlight streaming through the small side window. It already felt different. brighter. Warmer. She set the canvas on a makeshift stand. The brushes clinked in a mason jar filled with water. She opened a few paint tubes and stared at them for a long moment. Then, slowly, she dipped the brush into a deep shade of blue. Her hand hovered for a second. And then, she touched the brush to canvas. Just a small arc of color. A curve. Barely anything. But it was real. Her shoulders relaxed. "That's it," I said gently. "You just took the first step." She looked over at me, her smile quiet but proud. "It's scary," she admitted. "Starting over. But it also feels like breathing again." She painted in silence for the next hour, lost in thought, occasionally glancing up at me, as if to make sure I was still there. And I was. Not because I had to be. Because I wanted to be. Not for her past. Not for what she'd lost. But for who she was becoming. That evening, after a quiet dinner and a bit more painting, Emily disappeared into the bedroom for a few minutes. When she returned, she was holding something folded in her hand. A worn piece of stationery, slightly yellowed at the edges. "I never meant to show this to anyone," she said softly. "But I think it's time." She handed me the paper. It was a letter. Written in her handwriting, but addressed to no one. "I wrote it the day Ryan left," she said. "But I never mailed it. Never even finished it. Just wrote until I couldn't cry anymore." I looked down and read the first lines. "I don't know if this is meant for you or just for me. But I need to get it out. I gave up parts of myself trying to hold on to someone who let go a long time ago. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. And I want to remember who I was before I forgot." I looked up at her. She was staring at the floor, arms folded. "There's more," she said. "But that part always stuck with me." I gently handed it back. "That's one of the most honest things I've ever read." She nodded. It felt like, if I let go of everything, I'd disappear. But now, she looked up at me, eyes steady. "Now I feel like I'm coming back." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Then she added, "You were the first person who didn't ask me to explain. You just stayed. You listened. That's what you deserved," I said. Her voice was quiet, but sure. Maybe I needed to lose everything, to see who would still be standing next to me. The candle flickered again between us, just like it had that first night. Except this time, she didn't whisper, "Stay." She just reached out, and held my hand. And this time, it wasn't a question. It was an answer. A week passed quietly, like a slow exhale. Emily spent more and more time in the garage, transforming it day by day. What started as a dusty storage room had become a living, breathing sanctuary, filled with canvases, light, and pieces of her slowly stitching themselves back together. I never asked what she was painting. Sometimes I'd sit nearby, reading or helping her rearrange things. Sometimes we didn't talk for hours. But the silence between us had changed. It no longer felt heavy. It felt safe. One evening, she called me in. "I finished something," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. There was paint on her cheeks and the sleeve of her shirt, and somehow, she looked happier than I'd ever seen her. I stepped into the garage, and there it was, the canvas she'd kept turned toward the wall all week. She slowly rotated it around. My breath caught. It was a painting of a living room couch, hers, in soft, warm colors. Light from a candle danced on the walls. And there was a man sitting on the couch. Me. My head was tilted back, eyes closed, wrapped in a blanket. Peaceful. Still. As if the storm outside didn't exist. She spoke quietly. "That first night you stayed, it changed everything. I was falling apart, but when I saw you asleep like that, so calm, I felt safe for the first time in weeks." I couldn't speak. Then she smiled. This isn't just a painting. It's my thank you. My reminder. For what? I asked. For showing me what real presence looks like. For reminding me I wasn't invisible. That I mattered. I took a step closer, looking at the details, the way she painted the folds of the blanket, the faint glow on the wall. She looked at me. I know it's not much, she added, but, it's everything, I interrupted. We stood there, surrounded by paint, silence, and something deeper. It wasn't just a painting. It was her heart, on canvas. The weeks turned to months. The garage became more than a studio, it became her space. There were sketches on the walls, splashes of paint on the floor, and music humming low in the background almost every time I visited. Except by now. I didn't visit. I stayed. We never rushed into anything. No grand declarations. No perfect kiss in the rain. Just moments, real ones, that stacked up day by day, like brushstrokes on a canvas. One morning, Emily stood at the open garage door holding a new painting. It was brighter than the first. Still simple, but filled with life. Are you showing this one? I asked. She nodded, nervous but smiling. Next week. First time since college. There's a local exhibit. I figured, why not? Because it's time, I said. Because you're ready. She looked down, then up again. And you? What about you? What about me? Do you regret staying that night? I stepped closer. Emily, I said, that night didn't change your life. You did. You opened the door. You picked up the pieces. You faced the past. She looked at me with that quiet kind of gratitude, the kind that doesn't need words. And what about us? She whispered. I smiled. I think we were just waiting for the storm to pass. And it had. Not just outside the window, but inside her. Inside me. It wasn't a rescue story. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was two people who found each other in the middle of real life. In the mess. In the silence. In the choice to stay when everything else had fallen apart. She didn't need saving. She just needed someone who would show up, listen, and never ask her to be anything but herself. And that was more than enough.